Mackenzie critiques, no, Mackenzie dick rides the favorite anime. Just a little moin rage here about Final Fantasy VII Remake and this idea that the game may still be in 3 parts or multiple parts or released episodically. Now, I'm gonna say this flat out. There is no fucking way this game can be 3 parts. There's no way. Now thinking about it and ruminating on it a bit more, there's no fucking way you can release this game in 3 parts. You can't release 1/3 of a game that already exists. Final Fantasy VII already exists as a complete package. Now I'm going to get into the arguments that some people make. Now, the people who romanticize the industry and are apologists for subpar work, or apologists for these new modern distribution models for games, and how it's the future, and how, look, you got to accept the way games are getting released now. You know, games as service, fucking games as a platform to build upon. So making excuses for games releasing unfinished and then patched in, you pay to fill it in. And I think some of the most disgusting practices are actually from developers or publishers that you're not expecting. You think everyone's blaming Activision, EA for loot boxes, microtransactions, pay to win, games as service models, but we need to look at fucking what SquareEnix is doing right now. Final Fantasy 15, great game, decent game, not amazing, just a great game. Releases, you know, clearly full of plot holes, clearly full of chunks of development missing for characters, explanations missing. Ignis off screen comes back blind. He's supposed to be like, yeah, he's blind. Like, I'm not gonna question it, and then they make you pay for the answer. The answer to that later through his fucking DLC. Prompto has a whole fucking crucial plot integral backstory which they tell you nothing about. If you played that game from the beginning, you'd imagine none of these characters got character development. They filled that in later and made you pay for it. And then Kingdom Hearts came out, and there was so much missing in the middle act of that game. There was a huge chunk of like original story. There was Disney Worlds, obviously, that were recreating some of the games and this, that, but there was a huge chunk of just plot progression missing. And then you demand things of the game that you expected to be there. Square Enix pretend and act like, oh, you wanted that? Okay, we'll give it to you. When they know that shit was missing. And then they already planned, right after the game releases, they already have a whole roadmap of fucking DLC planned, which, oh, coincidentally fills in everything everyone asked for. This is the kind of bullshit tactic they use. It's about the pretext, getting the mandate, and then giving people the solution to the problem they created. This Hegelian dialectic, where you create the problem, you offer the solution when people demand a solution, and it's the solution that you crafted anyway. So this is exactly what they're doing. They're releasing their games just with chunks fucking missing, and I think it's Square Enix being really heavy-handed with the devs, and you know how hard it is for devs now, getting paid and crunch and all that nonsense, and people need to pay bills, and they've got no other choice sometimes. You know, they need to meet their rent, they need to meet their bill, they can't just find a new job like that. So maybe in Japan it's much more tougher like it is for anime animators, but I digress. Square Enix has been heading in this direction. So for Final Fantasy VII Remake to release in 3 parts, it's just fucking despicable. Like, now let's move on to the actual practical, you know, nature of game development and, you know, making the game. And people say, look, if you're going to realize Midgar, for example, in the modern age and modern affectations and you know, modern graphics and 3D and full free camera, no fixed camera angles, this, that, then that's going to take a lot of work. It's not as simple as just recreating, you know, reskinning or recreating that one fixed camera angle, those tiny rooms, you know, in Midgar. But I need to remind you guys that they don't need to model more rooms than were in the original game. Just because you model a whole area in 3D doesn't mean you have to make every single fucking door an interior. You really only need to visit the locations that you visited in that game, and that would be enough for fans. That would be enough for new people, like it was when people were playing fucking Final Fantasy VII back in 1997, and it would be fine for new people. You know, Final Fantasy VII was never this open world game until you leave Midgar. It was fairly linear. Yeah, it was a little sort of sandboxy kind of thing going on there. You go here, do this, partake in this little mini game over here, this little bit of dialogue there, run back. But it was mainly linear up until when you leave Midgar, and even then it was linear because you didn't have access to high wind and all that kind of thing. So at least for the first part, it's not going to be this thing. So I guess what they're saying is in place of that, they want to make this world more realized. They want to have more interiors. They want to have more places thing. But I still don't understand how you can release 1/3 of a game that already exists as a blueprint. The blueprint's there. The game is already there, Final Fantasy VII, which is what they're working off. And you telling me you could not create a one-to-one faithful version of that Final Fantasy VII without adding more or taking anything away? As one game, you couldn't do that. And if they did that, people would be fine with it. They pretend like, and SquareEnix has been doing this for a while. They're all about the graphics. People expect graphical fidelity. Tabata was constantly banging about those in interviews. People expect graphical fidelity. I remember back in Versus 13, when Nomura was the mouthpiece for Versus 13, that never came up. People are expecting graphical leaps and bounds, and we really want to make this the best looking game we can make. That rhetoric, that fucking narrative didn't start until they were creating their new engine. They needed to shield their engine. Now look, we're making an engine, it's gonna make everything look shit, all the pretty colors, all this bullshit they were talking about. Now everything's about graphics. The games aren't content rich. They're more about pretty colors, graphics, fucking action heavy bullshit, that kind of thing, rather than deep systems. Look at where were the deep systems in Final Fantasy 15? All the deep systems were added back. That whole character switching, controlling Prompto, Ignis, those were all in the blueprints of Versus 13. There was footage for Versus 13 where you're switching between Prompto and Noctis, and Prompto's firing his gun. Then they say we couldn't do it, and then they say we could do it, and then they give you character switching for free, but only after you've paid for the fucking DLC, which probably paid for them to implement that, because the only time you could control Prompto before it was even implemented in the game was when they created it specifically for the DLC experience. So you basically funded a feature of the game that should have been in the Final Fantasy blueprint, which is there. So you stop buying this yarn, this fucking bullshit that they tell you that we couldn't do this, we couldn't do that. I remember when the talk of Final Fantasy Remake came after the tech demo came out for the PS3 tech demo for Final Fantasy Remake. We all remember that. The excuse that fucking, I think Yoshinori Kitase or someone kept saying was to recreate a game the size of FF7 from the PS1 but in modern tech, modern graphics would just be impossible, a monumental task. Then they made Final Fantasy 15. So it shows you they could make a fucking big ass game. I think people would respond favorably if it was slightly less budget, great fidelity, great graphics, but you didn't have to, model all these locations in 3D and create new places to go to, because it's going to require a lot of retconning. That's another criticism of FF7 Remake I'm worried about, that there's going to be a lot of retconning to account for the compilation of Final Fantasy 7. You're going to have to put nods to Genesis and Loveless, definitely, for sure. You're going to have to put nods to Angio. You're going to have to put nods to the way they retcon some events with Zack, and the backstory and some of the interactions that Aerith had with Zack. And there's a lot of retconning that's going to have to go on. They're going to have to fill that in, and Tabata's left. And Tabata was the guy who made Crisis Core, which added a lot of actually somewhat meaningful backstory for Zack and filled out a lot of things, but they also lumbered Square Enix and the dev team. Now they're left with a story bible which they have to account for, and they have to account for stuff that happened in Dirge of Cerberus, and they can't forget that, because I know fans will be looking out for that. And even you could say to take into account stuff that happens in Advent Children, and they'll have to account for even Rufus's whereabouts and all this kind of thing, because Rufus is just gone from the whole game for like ages, and then you find out in fucking Advent Children that he survived the crash, survived it. So if you go visit that place, you're gonna have to find clues to Rufus fucking scrambling about, saying fucking sending him to the hospital on private healthcare, wherever it is. But these are my criticisms, man, of this game. I've been a fan of this game since 1997. I played this game. I'm 34 in October, so and I sound more harsh than I want really want to sound like for this game, because I am looking forward to it. I really want to play. I want to see those great moment to moments recreated. But the thing is, and I kind of want to talk about a video Jim Sterling made, is that this can't just be a pretty colors version of faithful recreations of moments we know from the game. I know what fans are looking for. They're just looking for faithful recreations of some of their favorite moments, but you have to recreate some of the complexity of the story, complexity of the themes, complexity of the deep systems, complexity of the way side quests feed into main quests, some of the more funny moments, the whole Red 13 dressed as a Shinra soldier, the marching mini games, the moments where he's in a homoerotic situation with a bunch of muscly bodybuilders in a spa or some shit like that, or sauna or some shit like that. Don Corneo, all that stuff. Nomura's taken a more edgy fucking, brooding emo fucking approach to Final Fantasy, introspective approach to Final Fantasy VII when he had directed Advent Children. Tabata actually had a little bit of fun playing with the lore, mythology, and all that kind of thing. But Nomura's all deadly serious, and I feel like he's gonna play up the deadly serious parts and leave out all the goofy, endearing kind of cutesy moments in there. And I hope that's not the case, especially if you run the prospect of splitting this game into 3. You cannot cut back anything. You cannot remove anything from a formula that worked, that put your fucking company on the map. It not only put PlayStation 1 on the map, put that fucking company on the map. People took notice of SquareEnix and Final Fantasy VII as a franchise, you know what I mean? So, I hope that, the franchise, Final Fantasy VII in particular, has the same kind of caretakers with the same integrity that the Resident Evil 2 remake had. Because in our fucking lifetime, for me, Resident Evil 2 remake is by far the best remake I've ever come across. It was so much care went into it, so much adherence to what was there, but making something new. I watched those dev diaries. They were having dinner and someone just put a secret camera and and it was there so that we could overhear their conversations about the development and the things they cut and why they made certain decisions. You could tell that this fucking game was in the hands of fucking masters. It was in the hands of students who had surpassed the teachers. It was in the hands of people who fucking knew this franchise and fucking did it. And Resident Evil 2 is selling fucking great, and it gives me hope that Final Fantasy VII Remake in the hands of the right people can be great. It's just disheartening to know that the first port of call for Square Enix when they decided to endeavor on this remake was CyberConnect 2 made the Naruto Storm games and Asura's Wrath games.
Believe it!
Why of all people would you give your fucking flagship franchise, the one that put you on the map, you probably one of your most profitable games ever, to CyberConnect 2? Like, is this how you handle something? Is this a passion project for you guys? Is this your baby that you fucking handing off to outsource it to CyberConnect 2 makers of the Naruto Storm Ultimate Ninja games? You know what I mean? So, hope you guys enjoy this little Moin Rage. It's just, you can understand the reservations of a game like this when people say you can't make it, and then when they do try to make it, they feed you all sorts of balling excuses about why it's like this, why it's like that. You just can't release a game 1/3 of a game that already exists. I'm sorry.